probably alerted you that we're recording now. So just
Yeah.
be aware of your words.
I usually
every time we made a phone call yesterday when I was hanging out, the person would say, "Hey, you're on speakerphone, so be nice. The pastor's in the truck." So
they were telling you that, or they were telling the other
no,
people?
they were telling the person that they were calling that, like, "Hey, be careful, the pastor's in the truck," which made me think.
Now, were they joking or were they?
That's exactly what I was about to say. I think they were just joking, but then I started thinking, how do y'all talk when I'm not around? I think they were just joking though. Not for sure, but
sometimes
just
when
funny.
I call in parts, I'll have it on speaker. I will just say, "Hey, the customer's right here too."
Yes, don't say that customer's an idiot or anything like that.
No, it's mainly just for pricing reasons.
Yeah, don't let them hear what you're actually getting the part for before you charge them for it. Yeah. Agreed. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us for MZBC, the podcast. We're coming to you from Stockbridge and from Jonesboro today, two different locations. Our schedules just could not meet up this week for whatever reason. Last week also, right, Mike? I think I bailed on you last week because of, last week I remember you asked me yesterday, what happened last week? Remember, I couldn't get the sermon to work last week. It was, some weeks are easy.
Last week I showed up. We all showed up on Wednesday because y'all had a meeting or something. Yeah, and I thought it was going to be over at 6:30, so that's why I just showed up. And y'all didn't even start until 7. I was like, I'm out.
Oh yeah, last week we had the staff planning meeting. You're right, and we were gonna record afterwards. And then once we started talking and hanging out, it went way longer than it was supposed to.
7.
And then this week, we were struggling. I can't tell if it's your internet that's freezing up or if it's mine.
I think it's yours. You just froze.
I froze?
Yeah, you froze up.
I don't know why. I'm like right here.
Good now though.
I'm good now.
You froze up again. Yeah.
I'm just sitting here. I'm not moving, I promise. Let me see if there's a different network in the office I can jump on. Here we go. All right, we'll see if that one works better. We're learning. Yeah, so last week we had that planning meeting, you're right, and then it went forever. This week we had a finance meeting and it went forever. And sometimes the me writing a sermon, some weeks it comes a lot easier than other weeks.
Yeah. And
so when I was trying to write, last week was, God, I'm struggling to even think about what last week was now. Do you remember what I talked about?
I'm thinking about it. It was David and Nabal.
There you go. It was David and Abigail. Yeah. And so I was just struggling with, because I was trying to come from the point of humility, and she was trying to get David to practice humility when Nabal was just being rude and wouldn't accept his gifts that he sent and all these things. So David said,
in layman's terms, he was being a jerk.
He's being a straight up jerk. Yeah. And he sounded like he lived his life as a jerk. And so David was like, well, fine, I'm about to wipe him out. I'm going to go get all of my men. Everybody get your swords. Here we go. Yeah. And she came in and stopped it. And so I was just having a hard time. How do you put this into words to teach so people can put it in their life? So that was a struggle. I think I usually write my sermons and I'm done like on Thursdays, but for whatever reason that week, it was like Friday at 5 o'clock before I left out of this office and felt like I had something I wasn't embarrassed to stand up in front of people and say. And so that was last week. And then this week's just been ripping and roaring everywhere. So
yeah,
every time I called you, you said, well, I'm in downtown Atlanta, or I'm in East Point, or I'm in College Park, or
they run me hard this week. And
yeah,
I tried to pull a few more hours to try to get caught up on some stuff. And I mean, I think if I had to think about it, I think every day I did 3 to 5 jobs every day this week.
Wow. That's intense. I mean, that's a lot of, because you're all over the place. And then I know that you have to be facing the same struggles everywhere I go, that have struggles with being able to get parts and get things. And so I'm sure in the mechanic world, that's just as difficult.
Yeah, and people like, what's the problem? I'm like, can't get no parts.
Yeah.
Can't get no
Hmm.
parts. Well, it's a struggle. And actually, Wednesday, I planned a job to do over at the water authority, which is right there behind the church.
Hmm.
So when I got done there, we could meet up and do our podcast. Well, of course, that didn't pan out right. I was there for 8 hours, and Terry Patrick, who runs the shop, the maintenance shop, he tried for I think 4 or 5 days to get an air compressor in for a truck.
Wow.
You know, I found the mountain gasket, and then finally he found a compressor, and I mean it was about a 2 hour delay getting the part that day,
Hmm.
but we got the job done, and he's actually one of the guys that we had a really good conversation at the end of the day. But
Oh, okay. Good we can
just
share that
work,
with.
man, work
Yeah.
and life. But
Yeah.
that's why we're doing the Zoom thing.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
giving
And
it a
thank God for
shot.
technology.
Yeah, we're giving it a shot, and we're gonna keep moving forward.
So we church life has been good this week. We have a internet mouse or internet rat and internet I don't know what you call
Gremlin.
it. Gremlin. Yeah, there you go. I don't know what's going on, but the internet works all week long. And for some reason on Friday night around 7 o'clock, it goes out. And then I have to go up here and reprogram it. And then it comes right back on. And then it works again until Friday night. So can't quite figure that one out. But when I leave from doing this with you this morning, I'm going to go over there and get that set up. And then we'll be good to go for our live stream tomorrow. And then Facebook, for some reason, kicked us off. I got a notification last week that said your page is unpublished because you guys have been impersonating something, or you have been I think it said misrepresenting yourself. And I'm thinking, we don't do anything on that page except post our Sunday morning worship service. That's all we do.
Yeah, and without the lawyer talk, it says you're spreading the truth. We don't want that out.
And we don't want that out there. It's too
We don't
true.
want the
Yeah.
truth.
So I've done everything I think I can as far as sending them emails saying, look, I think we were hacked. I think it was unpublished incorrectly, and no response. So it may be some kind of conspiracy theory. They may be trying to shut down the truth, like you say. Other people told me that too. I don't know. But for us, we're just going to keep rolling. We got YouTube, and it'll get out there, and we'll share the link with people and all that good stuff. And so it's all good. We had I know this year we said that we were going as a church. Part of our goals were to partner with our community and do different things. We had someone approach us this week that wants to start using our church parking lot. We have massive parking lots here to do a drive-through COVID testing site. One is these are two doctors. Okay, they're professional MDs. They work in Fayetteville in the emergency room. So I feel like their credibility is good. And we met and we talked, and they feel like it's a huge need for our community. And I told them, I had to be honest. I said, you know what? COVID doesn't even really cross my mind during the day. I just live my life. I don't even think about COVID, honestly. No one I know has it. My wife works in a nursing home, and so she's super cautious about it. But they think it's important, and we said that we wanted to reach our community, and so that's a new venture we're trying. It starts on November the 1st. So if you need COVID testing, there'll be a drive-through site here 5 or 6 days a week. So it's another partnership that God let us have with our community. I didn't know these people before then, and I would have never met them without COVID. And so that was a hidden blessing in all this chaos. That's another good way God's letting us connect with our community. We have some right now. I'm at the church, and right now there's a Kaiser Permanente diabetes prevention program that God connected us with. Something obviously we would never have any connection with, but God gave us these beautiful facilities and this gym, and it's really nice. And so people are here and getting in shape and trying to limit their diabetes.
It's turning from a spiritual fallout shelter to a medical fallout shelter.
It seems like it. But I read a book, or am reading a book, the one that I've been talking about that says love your community. And the pastor that is in this book, one of the things he says is at our church, he said, we begin to tell God and ask God and tell him that we'll say yes to a request until you tell us to say no. in our community. Like if our community comes to us and needs something, we'll say yes as long as we have the means until you tell us to say no. And so I've been trying to practice that on these few little ones we have. You know, you can't just let we get numerous calls throughout the week for people wanting to use our facilities and different things because it's so much space. So you got to
Yeah.
have discernment and be wise about it. But for the ones that seem legit, I'm saying yes until God tells us to say no, and we'll see. Who knows what kind of connections we'll make from that? You never know, but hopefully it'll be honoring to God, and He'll bless it. And we may meet some people that are coming through to get tested for COVID that may need to hear about Jesus and may end up being at church. So that's pretty cool.
And speaking of community, I believe last week when I was downstairs before class started, sometimes if I'm kind of like you, if I don't feel like I know what I'm going to talk about that day,
Hmm.
I'll go in my room and I'll read back over it.
Hmm.
Something else might pop up. So I'm reading, and a lady walks in, and I'm terrible with names, but I want to say her name was Alice
Hmm.
or Lisa or somebody, and she was asking where the meeting was going to be in the classes. I'm like, well, I said here. She went to sit down with me. Well, where I sit, there's nobody there but me. So I'm like, well, if you go on the other side of the divider, I said they got the coffee and the donuts over there. I said that's usually where they meet in the morning before they go to
Hmm.
class. So she walks over there, and I keep reading, and I'm like, about 10 minutes later, I'm like, she's new because she said that you invited her there. And I'm like, I better go over and say hey and introduce myself, because I was thinking if I just walked in, it's like, hey, where do they meet? And it's, oh, over there.
Yeah.
So I guess I got convicted of that. So I walked over there and I talked to her for about 5 or 10 minutes just to,
Hmm.
I guess, comfort her a little bit better for being in there.
Yeah. It's a
But
that
she was there because you invited her to talk to her.
not at all. Not at all. That's what everyone thinks, but it wasn't even me. I'll tell you where the confusion came in on that. She was walking in the back parking lot when we got here, having just walking, and Steve, our worship leader, met her in the back parking lot. He said he saw her walking around and saw her, and she came walking by, and he said, "Hey, are you okay? Good morning." Da 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 da. And he could tell that she had been crying. And so he said, "Is everything okay? Can I do anything for you?" And she said, "Yeah, I just need some time with God. I just need to walk around and spend some time with God." And Steve said, "Okay, well, you're in a good place for that. Can I pray with you?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, absolutely." So he prayed with her and then told her where all the classes met and what time we met for church. And then from that point on, everyone thinks I talked to her, because I think that she said the pastor, because it was an old white guy and she was at a church and he prayed with her. So I think she thought it was Steve. Technically, he is a pastor, just a music pastor.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
But
I
you
got
know the girl I'm talking about then,
I do
or
know
the
exactly
lady.
who you're talking
Okay.
about. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, a couple of people told me after church, "Hey, thank you for praying with her and inviting her to our class." And she came and we had a really good time and da 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 da. And I just said, "You're welcome." And then I called Steve.
If you're
And I
giving
called,
me credit, I'm taking it.
yep. So I was thinking the whole time, nope, that was Steve. But hey, it's awesome. I love it when that's exactly the heart of, I guess, any pastor or any leader, is to have, if random people like that do show up at your church, you want to know that your worship leader, that your Sunday school teachers, your deacons, whoever is going to see them first, greeters, will be
Mhm.
able just to do what the pastor typically would do, meet them, speak to them, find out what's going on, and encourage them, send them to a class where they can get encouragement. So I was very proud of the way Steve handled that. And then I was even more excited that she stayed. And I'm not sure if she stayed for church or not, because I couldn't tell by all the people if she was one of the people out there. But hopefully, wherever she is today, she'll remember us from last week and be
Yeah.
back. That'd be kind of cool.
I'm not even sure what class she went in because Terry was there, and I was like,
Hmm.
I said, "What class do you think she'd go to, Terry?" Because I don't know all the classes down there, but Bill's and mine.
Yeah. There's an older ladies class down there she went to, so that was kind of cool. They had a good time together. So I hope she felt welcome. I'm sure she did, just knowing the people in that class. And I'm sure that if church is going to be her thing, then I'm sure we made her feel welcome enough to where she would come back this week. So hopefully she does. That'd be kind of cool. But you said that you had some interesting conversations this week. You want to get into them now, or you want to set
Yeah,
them up, or what was going on?
one of them, I started out and I was out in Stone Mountain. It's actually they call it Eagle Rock,
Mhm.
and it's actually an old Budweiser plant.
Mm.
Probably just where they stored it. They didn't make it there. It's right off East Ponce,
Mhm.
and so it's been there. I don't know how long the film has had it and made it into a studio, but to drive by it, you wouldn't know it because
Mhm.
it's it's still. I mean, they still have the Anheuser-Busch logo and on the
Mm.
side of the
Mhm.
building.
Mhm.
Anyway, I was there. I'm working on a truck and did some AC work on it and fought with that for a couple of hours. Then I went to start the truck and the batteries were dead. It's like, why wouldn't the batteries be dead?
Mhm.
So I'm sitting there and and it's got 3 batteries. So it takes a few minutes you got to take the step down. You got to take stuff out of the way to get the batteries out. Well, the truck's parked back over in a corner because they're not using it. And then right beside it was another truck, but it was backed up. And I'm sitting there, I'm taking the batteries out and it's quiet. Well, the driver was in the truck and I could tell he was watching something on his phone.
Mhm.
I wasn't tuned into it, but I could just overhear it. And I'm taking these batteries out. And then all of a sudden I started hearing 666. I was like, all right. And the first thing I thought of was there's an Iron Maiden song that says take the mark of the beast at 666.
Mm.
It was kind of quoting a Revelation is what it was doing.
Mhm.
And I was like, all right, well, that's how I don't know what he's watching. So I keep messing with the batteries. Well, I heard it 3 or 4 times. I said, that's my opportunity.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
like, as soon as I get done putting these batteries in my truck, in my service truck, I'm gonna walk up there. And it's still playing, and I walk up beside the truck, and he's sitting in the driver's seat, and he's got the door open. I was like, "What's going?" And if you don't know their name, just call them a driver. That's what
Mhm.
we call everybody a driver. I said, "What you got going on, driver?" I said, "I don't mean to be rude or anything." I said, but he knew I was back there working. I said, I heard something, whatever you're watching, it said 666.
Mhm.
Well, we got in, started talking, and he was telling me what he was watching. It was, he told me the guy's name, but he used to be a Freemason. And apparently, this guy put out a YouTube video and he worked his way up high in the Freemasons and how they're a cult and not really what they are portrayed to be.
Mhm.
And he was saying 666 because it's like he was saying it was a demonic cult. And that's when I heard the 666.
Okay.
And that was my opportunity. And I took that to walk up there to talk to the guy.
Mhm.
And come to find out, he's saved just like we are. I mean, he had his bracelet on, and so we had a really good conversation, and it was great, and just bounced verses off each other. And he was telling me about the guy he was watching, and so it's little opportunity like when Steve took the opportunity with that lady in the parking lot.
Mhm.
Like I said, when I'm out working and I hear any kind of opportunity, whether it's something like the guy was watching the video and I just happened to hear that, out of everything that was said, I heard that. So I guess you're so in tune just to certain words and sounds. I guess if you're in the middle of a concert or a busy shopping mall and you hear one that's like 666, you're gonna, all right, where'd that come from?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I took it and we had a really good conversation. It was great. I actually got his number and I shared the podcast with him.
Mhm.
I want to say his name was Chris. And so that was cool. I was like, I know that when we're out there, we're not alone, but when it seems like you're working alone all the time,
Yeah.
spiritually speaking, from a Christian viewpoint, it's like, man, I'm glad I'm not alone out here.
Yeah, for sure. for sure.
It is way too much work for one person to deal with. And then
And
the
I think
next,
it's kind of what we were speaking about, talking about last week in our leadership training that we had on Sunday about being alert and like paying attention to what's going on around you, especially if you're just there to do a task like change some batteries or replace an alternator or whatever. You do a lot of things, but being alert to what you hear and around, because you could have easily just been doing your job, not paid attention to anything, and never had a conversation with that guy, and it would have never, he wouldn't have thought twice about it. You were just like a guy there working, and you were there, and then you were gone. There's so many chances I think I have that if I don't speak up in them, then they come and they go, and it never happens. But if you speak into them or talk to the person there, then I think people are willing to open up and have conversations just about real life stuff. When I met with those doctors last week to talk about the drive-through COVID testing thing, that's kind of how it started. I mean, anytime I meet with anyone, I have the pastor title, so they treat me a certain way because growing up or their whole life, they've always thought about pastors being a certain thing and whatever that may be. I don't know what that is because I have yet to meet the perfect pastor, but for some reason, everyone thinks that pastors are like perfect and walk a straight line and don't mess up. But so as we talked, they were saying things that were setting me way high up on the like chart of behavior and everything. And I just had, I was just like, guys, look, I'm just a regular person, and I'm glad you were here, and I'm
I
glad you
struggle
respect.
playing golf just like you guys do.
Yeah, I'm glad you respect me and think that of me. But let's just be real. I'm just trying to reach the community like you guys are trying to reach the community. So thank you for respecting me, but I'm not perfect. So we had some good conversations in that, and found out that one of the guys, the doctors, he's a father, a husband. He has 3 kids, and he has 3 kids, and the oldest one is 3 years old. I'm like, man, I told him I'm praying for you because that is like, that's work. A 3-year-old, and then two. I think he said, I want to say he said he has twins that are like 1.5 or something. So God bless him. But
it must be COVID babies there.
yeah, I don't know. He's an ER doctor, so I think during COVID he might have been busy. But their ages do almost match up with that, so we'll see. But yeah, I think it's just about being
There's a
alert.
name I heard. I think Haley listens to the Joy in the morning.
Yeah,
When we're getting ready, and they have like Generation X, then they have the millennials. It's like, what you call the COVID babies, like what, like perennials or something like that.
perennial.
Perennials or something. I was like, I like that.
Yeah. Hey, I would love to see. I mean, that's going to take some time, but in the next year or so, they probably will have all the stats of all the babies that were made during COVID. I'm sure the numbers will increase. I did hear something on the radio the other day that divorce increased during COVID when moms, when husbands and wives had to be together for so much time, they weren't used to it. So yeah, so divorces increased. I'm sure that sadly, I think I heard that domestic violence increased because people were together and just in closer proximity with each other all the time and stuff like that. So just interesting stuff. So that was your first conversation. You said you had 2.
Yeah, the second one was on Wednesday. I was out working, and we did the job, got the job done, and we're standing there talking, and I guess we couldn't talk as long as we would want to because the conversation was going good. Because at 4:30 they rolled up the sidewalks and they was like, all right, we got to go. I was like, all right, well, we'll pick it up later. But it was really good, and I've known the guy for several years, and I never knew he was a Christian guy. A super nice guy, real quiet, great to work with, easy to work with, and he's the shop supervisor. And come to find out, we probably don't live but 3 miles apart.
Oh wow!
So I was like, wow, we're neighbors, we're brothers, and we're neighbors. Who knew? And we got to talking, and I could tell he knew the Bible, and then I would say Bible verses, and he had a really good point when Jesus was talking about the broad road and the narrow road, or
Mm-hmm.
I think he actually said the broad road and the narrow path.
Pat, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it says wide is the road and broad is the path that leads to destruction, but the narrow path leads to eternal life.
Mm-hmm.
And he said at one point we were all on that road, the big wide road that led to destruction. And it said only a few found the path to eternal life. I was like, that's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had a good 30-minute conversation. Just, I mean, we went from, Genesis into the four gospels. And I mean, he even went all the way back into Revelation. I mean, we were just all over the place. And I mean, it was great just to sit there and talk and to hear the word. And it's like, man, that guy gets it. And, he has understanding of it and I understand it. And we're just sitting here and we're just enjoying this conversation that we're having. And it makes it worthwhile going out here and meeting new people, and then
Mm-hmm.
even going and circling back and having conversations with people, like you and I will have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was like, but the word is what ties us all together.
Mm-hmm.
We're all under God's umbrella, and Jesus even stayed tied to God, because Jesus said, I'm not even doing this on my own authority, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing it from the one who sent me. And it all just ties back how we're all connected to Christ, and then Christ connects us to God. And
Yeah.
ultimately, God is the head.
So that scripture you were referencing, Matthew 7:13, says, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it, it said. But
Mhm.
small is the gate and narrow is the road, or like you said, path in some translations, that lead to life, and only a few find it. And so when
Mhm.
you come across those few that find it, it's interesting. And I think that few is a big number, but it just shows you how many people are in the
Yeah.
world, because I mean, obviously there are millions and billions of believers. I mean, there's believers everywhere. I mean, there's just maybe not billions because we don't have that many people, but there's millions of believers all over. And then, but the scripture says, but only a few find it. I do think it's interesting how it's all, how we are all connected together, and how we all, what I struggle, I guess not what I struggle with, but what I'm trying to figure out as a pastor is how do you present the gospel in such a way that is attractive to people, not to, I mean, so this is a struggle. You want to make it attractive, right? Because anything I do in my regular life, I'm attracted to it for a certain reason, whether it's golf, whether it's the Atlanta Braves, whether it's Alabama football, whether it is going fishing with you, doing things with people that we enjoy. There's something about it that attracts you and you like it and it's fun. Um, with scripture and with church, people have so many different viewpoints of it and different thoughts about where they've grown up and how it was done and different things. And you don't ever want to have to try to make the gospel attractive. It's already attractive enough, like if people really understood the core of it, but everyone doesn't always. And so it makes it kind of tricky to get it into people's lives and then and actually have them hear you, because like we try to do events, like we have the trunk or treat coming up strictly for the reasoning of have the community come onto our property and be welcomed and feel Jesus's love and God's love through us just giving out candy. We try to do things like that. We have open gyms for kids where they can just come in and hang out, and it's a safe place and all these things just so they can experience Christ's love. We are doing the Thanksgiving baskets where we bring food to people just so they can experience Jesus. And so we try all these ways, but it's still up to the individuals to say, is that attractive to me? Like, is that something that is pulling me towards it? Even though we, as believers, we know that it's the most beautiful thing there is. We know that relationship is better than anything they can have, but getting people to see that and realize that, man,
Mhm.
that's a difficult task.
Yeah, it is, because I asked Pastor Chris,
Yeah.
years ago. I said, how do you take the gospel to people? And it's like, this is the most important decision of your life,
Mm-hmm.
because it's life itself. and you need to accept Christ to inherit the eternal salvation and to be in heaven. Because if you don't, you're gonna be in hell, and it's eternity. We as humans really can't fathom eternity, because everything we do is, and I tell the guys in the class, I said it, we can't really fathom eternity because everything we do is point A to point B.
Yeah.
In the morning, 6 o'clock, we wake up. That's point A. And at 8, 9 o'clock at night, that's point B. We're done. So everything we do has a start and a stop. God doesn't start or stop. He's always been there. And we just have to take that on faith, because we can't fathom that. We can't picture it. And I said, but then when they do, then you have to turn around and tell them it's going to be the hardest walk of your life. I said, so basically, how do you take oil and water and mix it? He goes, that's a good question. And then, and I asked, I've asked it several times to several people. I don't know how many people I've brought that up to. And then finally, one day I was talking to somebody about it, and I got the answer, not from that person, but it's like, Mike, you can't. You either accept the gospel for what it is, which is the truth. And that's something else that me and Terry and myself got talking about truth and then good and evil. It's like, well, how do you know it's the truth if you don't have anything to compare it to? And like when Jesus was on trial before Pontius Pilate, and he said, who are you? He says, I'm truth. And then Pontius Pilate, like, what is truth? He goes, I am. I got Sid here behind me meowing. And then it's like, well, how do you know something's good unless you have something bad to compare it to? And Jesus did all that.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I just completely lost track of thought, but you can't mix it. So you have to present it, the gospel, the way it was presented. And to get back to what you were saying, how do you make it, I don't know, attractive? Well, you do it the way that you can. You present it in your format, in your personality, and just like I do, and any other person that has answered the Great Commission, because we've been the people that spread it for Christ, who are his representatives. He has given the ability to them because of the way they can deliver things. So the way you present it might be 180-degree difference from the way I do. But the core of it, like you said, is God, is the truth. And it's like, well, I don't like the way that sounds. It's like, I don't either, but it's God's word.
Right. Yeah, like it's not easy for me either. I agree, it's a struggle. That's what, when people, well, I can't keep up with that and I can't do that. You're like, well, me
not
either.
Saying I don't agree with all of it, but just for instance, years ago when I was reading in the Old Testament, and God was saying in Aaron's bloodline is the priesthood. He says, now the priests have to be this type of person. They can't have a physical defect or nothing like that. And I'm like, well, that seems a little cruel. And I run that by Haley, and she's all about kids. She goes, well, I don't like it. It's like, I don't either, but that's what God wanted. He said if they have like a handicap or something, they're out. That was Old Testament, of course. That don't pertain to today. But
yeah, they had. I mean, I'm thankful that I did not grow up in Old Testament days. They were a lot more strict. Like they were. I'm thankful for the grace and mercy of Jesus in our lifetime, because it makes it a lot different. But it is, and I agree with you. It's like, and that's where I'm getting to with my being content with just everything in my life. And I was thinking yesterday, I was driving, contentment almost comes across as I don't care sometimes. And I think because people at one point in our life, or not just this life, but just not just this church life, but in all of our experiences, we've been around people that were they tried to do too much. Like they tried to make things happen for God, or they tried to continue to be busy all the time so that it looked like we were doing something for the gospel or doing something to grow the church. And sometimes it just is continuing weekly to be obedient to showing up, to preaching the gospel, to hanging out with people, to leading the best to the best of your ability, and then leaving it at that. Like just leaving it right there. Don't beat yourself up and say, I think I could have done more, or we should have done this. Look, that's what God gave me for that week. And unless I was just blatantly being apathetic or blatantly, going against what I'm supposed to do it as my job, then I got to be content with that's what God told me to do this week. And so there's some weeks where I feel like we didn't do enough, or we should be doing more. And then I got to remember just to be content. And it makes me feel, like I said just now, it makes me feel sometimes like I don't care about certain things, because I will even say those words, like I don't care. But I'm not saying I don't care from my heart. I'm saying I don't care how it happens, or I don't care that situation. I just care that we're content and we're moving forward with what God's told us to do. If God takes 5 years to bring people to our church, then God took 5 years. We just got to keep moving. If God takes another year for this land and loan corner to finally close and sell, and us to have that debt behind our in the past, then we have to be content with that and keep moving. But that does not make it any easier. It's still a struggle and a challenge, just to keep grinding out every week. But the blessings on the other side of that are so much bigger than any of the struggles we have, that's the motivation. Like Jesus has already promised us everything. All the riches in glory, all the riches in heaven, like everything that he is inheriting as the Son of God, that he's inheriting as God's, the payment for sin, all that Jesus has is promised to us. And that's a massive thing. And so we can take refuge in that. Like I preached on last week, is God really your rock and your fortress and your refuge? And if he is, then it's okay. Because wide is the path that all the everyone's walking down, but narrow is this little bitty gate that we're trying to get through. And it becomes difficult because everything on the outside of that gate is pretty and looks like fun, and until you get up close to it and you see that it's really decay, and it's not pretty and fun, and it'll ruin your life. And so it's a journey, this journey that we're on, but it's one that I embrace, and it'll take us to our scripture if you want to jump in there for today. I think Jesus speaks right to this. So the last time we were together, we had Kim and Dee with us, and that was a good podcast. A lot of good discussion about Jesus walking on water and trusting him, and their walk with God as Mr. D runs his business and as Kim serves in our community. But then right after Jesus walks on water, and it says that the boat reached the shore where they were heading.
Yeah, he hops in the boat and it's like, oh, we're here. So why did you even get in the boat?
Yeah, we talked about that in our leadership training, or in our trivia night that Haley did the other night. That was one of her questions. Like, it was like a bonus question. Like, how long did it take once Jesus got in the boat for the boat to actually hit the land? And one person knew it. Like, one lady raised her hand immediately and said, the scripture says that immediately they reached the shore. And so that was kind of cool that someone actually paid attention to that, because I had just read over that for many, many years. But right after that, so Jesus walks on water, and his guides are like freaked out, and he gets in the boat. Then they're on shore. It says the next day, the crowd, this is in verse 22 of chapter 6. The next day, the crowd that had stayed on the opposite shore of the lake realized that only one boat had been there, and that Jesus had not entered it with his disciples, but that when they had gone away alone. And then some boats from Tiberias landed near the place where the people had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. And once the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got into their boats and they went to Capernaum in search of Jesus. So just an illustration here of some big stuff just went down. He just fed 5,000 people. He just walked on water, and now he's not around. And so these people want more. So they go to find him. And it says in verse 25, when they found him on the other side of the lake, and they asked him, Rabbi, when did you get here? And Jesus answered and said, very truly, I tell you, you are looking for me, not because you saw the signs that I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill.
Mhm.
Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him God the Father has placed his seal of approval. And then they ask him, like, what must we do? What works does God require? And Jesus said, this is the work, to believe in the one that he sent. And so they ask him, what sign that will you give us that we may see it and believe? What will you do? Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, as it was written, and he gave them bread from heaven to eat. And Jesus basically tells them, look, it wasn't Moses who gave them the bread in heaven, but it was God who gave
Mhm.
them the true bread. For bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. And then these people say, well, of course, that's what we want. Jesus, how do we always give us this bread? And Jesus said, I am that bread. I'm the bread of life. Whoever
Yeah.
comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. But he said, but as I told you, you have seen me and still do not believe. And so I thought that was interesting. He said, look, you've seen me. And these people are crying out, like, we want that. That's exactly what we want. And he's like, well, here I am. Like, you got it. Like, I'm right here. So many
Yeah, and
times in
they're
our
like, "Hey, will you give us a sign?" It's like, I just fed all you people. I took this little kid's lunch and fed all you people, and y'all still want a sign?
yeah, like, what other sign do you want? I just walked on water. I fed
Yeah.
all these people. I healed. I
If
mean,
you,
if you,
yeah, you said, well, we saw the boat over there, but we know you didn't get in it, but you're over here.
yeah.
Okay, well, how do you think I got over here?
We always want, in this world, we always want more proof. Like, we want more and more proof. And I think everything Jesus has done up into this point in the scriptures are all the proof that even we would need in 2021 to live lives that are sold out and surrendered to him. But we always want, like, him to show us one more thing. Like, okay, I believe you did that in that person's life, but show me one more thing in my life. And it's just, so it goes on to say after that, Jesus said, you've seen me and you still don't even believe. All those the Father gives me, all those the Father gives me will come to me, and whoever comes to me, I will never drive away. For I've come down from heaven not to do my will, but to do the will of Him who sent me. And so I think that's the crux of the whole thing. The selfless acts of Jesus is like nothing he does is on his own accord. Everything he does is like what's instructed for by God the Father, and everything God the Father instructs Jesus to do is on our behalf. Like, it's so that we can be redeemed from what sin has caused in our life. And what he requires of us is just to believe. And he says, what does God require? It's this, he says, to believe in the one that he sent. That's what God requires. And that's too simple for people to understand.
Yeah, and I like what he said. And, we went through John 6 a few weeks back in McLean, and they're like, in having a hard time seeing because of the low light. 25 says when they found him on the other side of the sea, they said, Rabbi, when did you get here? Like they're concerned, they're gonna try to play it off. It's like, well, we're worried about you. When did you get over here? He's like, look, y'all not fooling me, okay? You don't care about me. I assure you, you're not looking for me because you saw the signs,
Mm-hmm.
okay? You're looking at me as a free meal ticket.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
why you came looking for me, because you got a free meal. He's like, that's out.
Yeah.
Because it always said, I think earlier in John, I don't remember the exact chapter, it said he wouldn't entrust himself to man because he knows man's heart.
Mm-hmm.
And he just proved that in 6. He said, you're not looking for me because of who I am and who sent me. You're looking for me because you're hungry and want something else to eat.
That's right.
And
It's
then that's when he got into the bread of life. He said, work toward eternal bread, not food that perishes.
mm-hmm. So many times I think in our own lives we're looking for Jesus to do that next thing, and we're not looking for Jesus, because when you find Jesus, then you have to change you. Like your whole demeanor changes when you find Jesus. So we don't technically always want Jesus, but we want the things of Jesus. And so it's like that's still, like, even back in this day, it's still some of the struggles we face today. People will see us at this church living life and God blessing us and being able to do things and have things and just live a certain way where we're not going without. And then people see that and they want that, but they don't realize all that comes along with that. They don't know the late nights of praying and just crying and being hurt for not being like I guess living up to the standard that we set for ourselves. They don't know the struggles of being in with people when they lose a loved one that didn't know Jesus, or even being with someone when they lose a loved one that did know Jesus, the hurt that comes with that. So this whole walk, it's a process and it's a lifestyle. And that's what we're trying to share with people. Like, it's not just a one moment encounter where, okay, now I have Jesus and life is rosy and turns good. It's like this grind lifestyle to where there are going to be days where you feel unworthy. There are going to be days where you feel you can't do the task. There are going to be days where you feel like you let God down, you let your kids down, you let your wife, spouse, everyone down. And the whole time Jesus is saying, nah, I knew that already. Like, I knew you couldn't do it on your own. I know you're going to fail tomorrow also, and I still love you. And that's what we're trying to get across to people. Like, no matter what, if you believe in the one he sent, like he said right here in verse 29, then you don't have to feel that guilt. You don't have to feel that shame. You don't have to try to meet any standards. There's no work you're trying to do, because that was the people's question. What must we do to do the works that God requires? And Jesus is like, nothing. You
Because
just
in
got
the
to
Old
believe.
Testament, they were so, somewhere along the lines, it went from just obey my word.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've got a plan of salvation for you, but just obey my word for now. And the word that God was given Moses was actually preparing them mentally for the promised land. He
Mm-hmm.
was wanting them to mold them into a holy group of people, not over anybody else, but just them, because he chose them to make them a holy group of people, as they really God's representatives on earth, so the earth and the world would come to God, the knowledge of God. And somewhere along the lines from there up to when Jesus showed up, the Pharisees and the Sadducees had twisted it so much that now it's like, we are the holiest of holy in the world. And if we do all these good works, we're in.
Mm-hmm.
God's like, and Jesus, when he showed up, he said, no, that's not right.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say anywhere in you, and he says it many times in your scriptures. It doesn't say that. He said, you in Paul, no, Jesus said, you studied the scriptures diligently because in them you think you have salvation or eternal life. He said, no, if you read them the way they were written, you would see they're about me. And then right here, he said, and there's like in 20, was it 28? What can we do? What can we do to perform the works of God? Because they're so used, like you said, before Jesus showed up, they're so used to having to work. They think if they work enough and they do enough good works, they're in. So that when John wrote that, it makes sense because that's probably their mindset. But Jesus gave them the answer they probably wouldn't expected. Because in 28:9, it says, this is the work of God, that you believe in the one he sent. That's it. Do you believe in me, who I am? I am who I am. Like, yeah, you're good. That's it.
And it is work. Like, it is believing in Jesus does take work.
Now, and sometimes mentally believing is more work than physical work.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
I mean, there's been times when I've read stuff, I was like, man, as soon as I got done reading, I was like, I need a nap.
Yeah.
I was like, my brain is just turned into mashed potatoes after reading all this.
In the world we live in, it doesn't work this way. Like, it doesn't work to where people are willing just to
because like in capitalism, if you want to be really successful, they say work. Put it all, put 110% in. So we're kind of in the same mindset as they were then. It's like the more I work, the more successful I'll be. It's like, well, no, not really.
Hmm. And I think it's a lot of people. I know you don't do sports, but a lot of people, there's like for Alabama football, for Georgia football, for things like that. You'll always hear Kirby Smart or Nick Saban talk about trust the process, and if you would just stick to the process, then we're going to reach the goals that we've set and all these things. And that's a true statement. They have a process that starts from when these kids are like 17, 18 years old, and they recruit them onto their campus, that if they will do the workouts, if they'll do the meal plans, if they'll be at the meetings, if they'll be at the practices, if they'll just devote all their time to this one thing, then there is a final plan and there is a goal, and that's to win championships. And Georgia and Alabama do things like that because the kids trust the process. It's the same. It's the same mindset in the scripture, in this Jesus walk that we're talking about. There's just a process, and people don't want to stick to the process. They want the microwave quick remedy answer, and it's like, no, it's like a process. The first thing you have to do is believe in Jesus, the one that God sent. Believe that he came for people that he knew was going to sin. He came for people that he knew were going to turn their back on him. He came for people he knew that could never get it right on their own, that will continue to fail today, and he still died for you. And so if you believe that and allow God to start working and changing you, then you're starting that process. And then it becomes it's a lifelong journey. I mean, I know older people that are still trying to figure out the God thing, not because they don't know Jesus and don't know what he says to do, but it's just like, how do I mix this up with how do I mix the oil and water together? Like you said, I saw a funny meme the other day. A guy said, so oil and water don't mix. And he poured it in a cup and the oil rose to the top, obviously, and it's just floating on top of the water. And then they show him sit back and pour oil all over his socks, and then he runs across water. Like, it's obviously fake, but I thought it was just hilarious. Like, he runs
like
across.
He was going to float on the water.
Huh? It made me think of Jesus walking on water and oil being on his feet.
He could have olive oil on his sandals.
And maybe that's why the lady, it said she washed his feet with the oil and stuff that separated him. So, but yeah, it is a journey and it's a process that people got to stick to and do. And that's what I think this is a grind, part of the process. Even the podcast, even preaching, even just doing church in general is part of the process, because there are days like we got busy last week and then we were busy again this week, and the podcast got pushed back, not because we didn't both think we love doing it and like we know it's reaching people, but it's like, man, life got so busy and it's out of the way. But we're up on a Saturday morning at 9:00 trying to film it because it's part of the process. Like, it is part of the process of us strengthening one another as leaders in the church, us growing together as friends, and then hopefully people hearing our true hearts saying, look, we don't have it all together either. We just know it's Jesus and we're just trying to follow him. This is what he told us.
We never will have it all together.
Ever. Like, ever. The day we'll have it all together is the day we're not on this earth anymore, and it won't matter it won't matter to what the people we're trying to please on this earth. It's a crazy thought, but the day we have it all together, because I think, do you agree with this? Like, the reason we want it to be all together is because I want to appear to you and to others that I have it all together. I want you to see my life and be like, oh, he's got it all together. That's pretty awesome guy. And the day that we actually have it together, they won't even be able to see us because we'll be in heaven. I mean, it's just like,
so where'd he go? He ain't here.
He's out. No more.
He's out.
It's interesting.
He will not be doing the podcast anymore.
No. And if he does, it's like a spiritual, supernatural thing. That'd be kind of crazy.
This week it was great just because of those two conversations. It helps me out to hear it too from people that you don't know or don't expect it to hear from.
Absolutely.
Because when you're at the church building on Sundays, and you know what you're going to hear when you're there. Mm-hmm. For instance, when you go to a football game, you know what you're going to hear. The cheering and the coaches and the yelling. You know what to expect. But when you're out, say you're at Sam's and you're shopping and you run into another football fan, you didn't expect that. So you take time and you guys sit there and y'all talk about games and plays and whatever's involved. So it helps me when I'm out. And it's not that um I need that, I'm looking for that boost of faith
Mm-hmm.
or encouragement, because I know where my help comes from. It comes
Mm-hmm.
from the maker of heaven and earth.
Mm-hmm.
But as anybody else, it is nice to have the encouragement when you're not expecting it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it helps you do your job, your calling. Anytime you get help, and it's even more rewarding when you're seeking the help and you get it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was like, so it was really nice, and I look for those times, and there's many times where I've been working and that conversation started. I stopped working.
Yeah,
I was like, that's broke. That's not going anywhere. I said, this may never happen again.
that's right. You got to take advantage of when those opportunities pop up. You got to seize the moment right then, because you're right. It may be the only time you have a chance to speak truth into that person's life ever. Like the door may never open again.
Yeah. Like with that lady that was in the parking lot, Steve could have said,
That's right. He could have
"No,
got
I'm
out of
gonna
his
go
car
in
and
here,
walked in.
tune up my guitar, and when I get done with that and come back out, if she's here, I'll go talk to her."
Right.
I'm assuming he went as soon as he saw her.
As soon as he saw her, yeah. So that was pretty awesome. And this scripture also got me thinking about, okay, if Jesus says he's the bread of life, what does bread do in my life? Like, what is it for? Like, bread is like a nourishment. Bread is like something that sustains you. It gives you life. It gives you energy. And so that's what Jesus is doing. He's able to sustain us. He's able to give us nourishment. He's able to give us energy and being able to do the things we do if we'll just tap into the power source. If we'll just believe in the one God has sent. And that his ways are above our ways and his thoughts are above our thoughts. And he understands that and knows that, but he still wants to use us in these mighty ways. And I think when I say stuff like he wants to use us in mighty ways, I picture like a revival where there's like these massive things happening. But I have to remember that God using us in mighty ways may just be as simple as talking to a coach over at the high school, or talking to somebody in my community and right around here, or just encouraging people. And you never know, that for that moment, that may have been the encouragement they needed to keep going, just to keep pressing on and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
so
they could have been on their way over to the bridge on 75.
absolutely. And you
And then
intersected
you
their life
talk to
right there.
them, and they could be the start of that huge revival.
Yeah.
You don't know.
And we have a great opportunity here at Mount Zion. I think that obviously God is in charge of everything, but the different demographics here and the different diversity that we have here, and I'm white and you're white, obviously, but the community we're in is predominantly not white. And so I think it helps. I mean, because across the spectrum of the world, there's like still a racial division, no matter how far we try to get away from it, and to just everyone's the same. We're all sinners, and Jesus created and God created all of us. There's still this racial divide. And so I feel like every time that I'm able to interact with people of a different ethnic group, whether it's Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever, that helps break down those walls. And we're becoming more and more what God created us to be, just a people surrendered to him, believing in his son, and living life together, knowing that this isn't the end all be all, that we're heavenly citizens that are just here for a short period of time. And so while we're here, glorify him the best we can, have our contentment in him the best we can, and just live lives that are surrendered to him and selfless to other people. And then that's all we can do. And then we just trust in his plan.
Because when we get to heaven, we're all going to be living together still.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the believers will anyway.
I've heard people say before, like when they don't like somebody, like come up to them and like if I don't think you like me, and they'll approach them and say, when we get to heaven, we're going to have to live together. You're like, yeah, I know, but when I get to heaven, my heart's going to,
It's like, yeah, but we're not there yet. I still have time not to like you.
That's right. That's right. Well, God is doing some cool things around here, and I'm appreciative of leaders like you and others. We had a leadership meeting on Sunday. I was super encouraged by. I've been asking God to bring people along with me that will stand up and share their hearts and just testimony to people that will. When a pastor speaks, it's one thing. People think I get paid to always talk about God and things, and I do, but that's not my only reason. When another person, a lay person, a volunteer steps up and shares their heart, it just has a different meaning. And so I've been praying for God to do that. He did that this past month, and we've had our leadership training on Sunday, and a new person led, and I was super excited about that. He's just doing some cool things here with relationships and people, and I'm just learning to just stay the course, just stick to it, and trust him. And whatever Mount Zion ends up being, whatever Russell's pastorship ends up being, whatever Mike's legacy as a life group leader ends up being, we throw it all in the hands of God. And if it never gets any better than it is today, then it's a blessing, because we're able to freely share the gospel and live our lives, and it's good. And so that's the mindset I'm in. I think I'm in a great mood today because I get to go from here and go play in a golf tournament today. So that's always a wonderful day in my life. My brother's coming down.
We're going to load up the kayaks after this.
Hey, yeah, see, so you're going to be out in nature. That's awesome. Yeah.
And it's going to be, personally, just for me, it's going to be a great day, because I'm actually going to get to fish a lake that I never thought I'd get to fish again.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily the lake, but it's the person that took me to that lake, and it was Mr. Doug.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
And this is him. He had his pond at his house. We fished it. And then there was 2 other little private lakes that we went to. One I still have access to, and I go there just whenever. But this one today, the way it panned out, is a guy I worked on his RV about 3 or 4 years ago, because a lot of your Teamsters are from out of state. So they'll have a camper when they have, say he was working here, so he brought his camper down. Well, he was having trouble with his generator, and I worked on his generator 3 or 4 years ago. Well, he ended up, he bought a house, and he wanted to sell his camper to one of his stepsons. The generator wasn't working right again. So I went down there about 3 weeks ago. I'm like, well, where do you live? And he's like, well, I live right down here in Hampton now. And when I went down there, and I knew as soon as I pulled up to that house, I knew exactly where I was. And, I got his generator up and running. He goes, you want to fish the lake? I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
And so today is that day that I'm fishing a lake that I thought I'd never get to fish again. And it's mainly not the lake, but because Mr. Doug took
the
me.
person that introduced you to it. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. He had a
Yeah.
huge impact on your life. And that's so you're going to have, when you get there, you're not going to be able to hold back the emotions if you're anything like me. At some point today, they'll strike you.
Well, the guy that, and ironically, the guy that lives there, his name's Rex, not the Rex that you know, but
Now, that is funny. That is funny.
it's a different one.
Yeah.
We got on a side by side, like I said, about 3 weeks ago when I was there, and we rode around the property, and he said, you can have access to the lake, and he's got a pedal boat there that Haley and Levi are going to get in.
Okay.
I'm taking my kayak.
Nice.
And he said, what are you going to charge me for this? And I told him, I was like, is that fine? He said, yeah, that's great for me. I said, since you're giving me full access to the lake, I didn't charge him much of anything.
Yeah.
And I said, you really just don't know what that means to me. And I'm not really emotional about it, but I'm glad that I can go back to it. And I told him everything about the lake. I said, that house over there, and there's the feeder creek and the dam, and it was great. And to add
That's really cool.
What you said, what come to my mind is what Paul wrote to Timothy. When we're done, he said, I've run the race, I've kept the faith. And so at the end of our earthly life, it's like, I kept the faith. Now it's time to go get my reward. And Paul wasn't bashful. He goes, I'm going to get my reward that's waiting on me.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily things, but the reward is to be in the presence of God for eternity. There will
And
be
bring as many people as we can with us.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time this morning, Mike. Thank you guys. Like and subscribe to the podcast. Me and Mike will hopefully be back in the reclaim layer next week if time permits. If not, then hey, this way works too. So I like it. We can do it from anywhere. And so we appreciate you guys' support. Go out there and love somebody today. Spread the gospel. Let them know Jesus loves them, that no matter where they are, he hasn't forgot about them. And we're going to stay on this process. We're going to keep the journey going and be content with where
Keep
God
the
has
faith.
us. Keep the faith. All right, Mike, I'll talk to you later, brother. Peace.
See you guys.
Yes, sir.
Bye.